Parker came out of Kansas City, which a lot was happening. Bird was born in 1920. By the time he was a teenager, I think I saw in your book, Chuck, he was a professional by the time he was 14. So what was it, Chuck, why don't you talk about what was the scene like in Kansas City in the mid-1930s?
Kansas City was a 24-hour town. During Prohibition, it was business as usual. The vice, graft, and corruption and lawlessness was fostered by the local government that was lorded over by a political machine headed up by one Tom Pendergast. Tom was in the liquor business and he liked to gamble. So the city government really fostered this wild time. Mary Lou Williams, there's plenty of work for musicians. Mary Lou Williams recalled 50 clubs between 12th and 18th Street, and with featuring live music. And during the Great Depression, because there was work in Kansas City, musicians from the Southwest Territory came to Kansas City and joined the union, Local 627. So you had, so over 300 musicians playing around, jazz musicians playing around town by the early 1930s. And Charlie Parker came up in that tradition, and he was really shaped by the late night jam sessions that started at midnight and went all the next day. And that's really where he learned his craft, how to go in and out of key, and how to play double time and all those tricks of the trade that musicians used to best each other in these legendary late night cutting contests.
Yeah, well, there's a famous story, I'd like you to retell it, about when Bird, Chuck, was getting his stuff together and he played with Joe Jones, and Joe Jones was not particularly happy with what he heard. Could you share that story with us?
Well, Bird liked to hang out, like to roost, I always say, in the balcony above the bandstand at the Reno Club, where the reefer smoke was heavy from the band burning one down on the stage. And they had what they called a spook breakfast. It's something that Basie remembered from Harlem. And the Count Basie band was playing there at the time. And it'd start on Sunday night and go all day Monday. Well, Charlie Parker had just picked up his horn and was studying at Lincoln High School, and he decided to sit in on one of the sessions, and he faltered while playing Honeysuckle Rose, and Joe Jones threw a cymbal at his feet and humiliated him in front of all the people in the club. So he retreated from 12th Street and went home and practiced for 12 to 14 hours a day. His neighbors, he reported how his neighbors really were complaining about his practicing all the time. And he mastered his horn, vowing that he would never get caught short again. And he never did.
Bobby, did you ever have a similar experience where you thought you had it together, you got on the bandstand, and you got some feedback that made you get back into the woodshed?
Absolutely, yes. And sometimes it was unspoken, just maybe sometimes just bearing witness and to someone else next to you or on the bandstand that was exhibiting more maturity, experience, and depth. If you're honest with your vision, you'll know. And I'm sure Bird, when he made that falter and got a little lost there, I'm sure he was really frustrated, and then to have it for all to see, I'm sure that was a big fire in his heart and soul, because every musician, as we're growing, especially jazz musicians, we come up against someone that has more experience and more language and what have you, and that drives you. It started in concert band. I was playing clarinet in the clarinet section, and we had our spring concert, and this other person stood up and played the clarinet solo with the band. That drove me crazy, because I wanted to do that, So those type of things, they light a fire under you like no formal lesson or whatever can do.